LeBron James sees the end of his career looming. So should the Lakers build behind Anthony Davis? We'll take a deep dive into the Rams' evolving defense, and Max Muncy takes baby steps toward a return with the Dodgers. Good morning. I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos morning report. And so it is May 25th, 2024, back in the sanctum sanctorum of LA sports. And if you like being in the know about LA, clickety-clack the like button, clickety-clack the subscribe button. There's a notification bell. Hit that. It'll let you know when we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist. And by all means, comment. Now, we are going to go, like I said, we are going philosophical today. We're going to be talking a lot about the Lakers. And yes, we broke out the whiteboard of intellect to talk about the Rams. Before we go through the news and notes, though, a look at the scoreboard. Oh boy, Dodgers on a 3-game losing streak. I still slept well, even though the Reds won 9-6. James Paxton gave up a grand slam. The bullpen implodes. There's been a lot of change in the bullpen to accommodate for injuries. You can't always expect perfection. On the plus side, Teoscar Hernandez hit his 11th home run. And YB chilled because the Dodgers still lead the division by 6. It's a boat race, guys. Also, Indiana 78, Sparks 73. The WNBA season is in its infancy, but it might be fair to ask once again if the Sparks are going to be a good team. They tumbled to 1-3. The one win they have was against a team that still hasn't won. And then the Fever, they come in, they're 0-5, and they get their first win of the year. Caitlin Clark, though, did not exactly impress. She was outscored by both Sparks lottery picks. Rickea Jackson, 16 points. Cameron Brink, 15 points. Clark finished with 11. But by the way, once again, because the WNBA is falling into the trap of hype over skill, the scribes went gaga over what the women wore to the arena. Why? Both Clark and Brink. Oh my God, they're such head turners. Ladies, I'm being serious with you guys. If you ever see this program, so far, the two of you have combined for a record of 2-8. I don't care what you wore to the arena. Stop trying to impress people with what you wear to the arena. I don't care if you come in scrubs that haven't been washed for a week and a half. It's time to ball. It's not time to glow. Meanwhile, today, the Dodgers are at Cincinnati at 4 o'clock. Walker Buehler is 1-1 with a 4.05 ERA. Hunter Green 2-2 with 3.22 ERA. Houston is at the Galaxy. It is Galaxy game day at 7:30. The Galaxy have tied 4 consecutive games. Meanwhile, LAFC is at Atlanta United at 4:30. The Black and Gold have won 4 consecutive matches, albeit 2 against USL teams in the US Open Cup. And the Five Stripes, by the way, are on an 8-match winless streak. Now, let's get to the news. LeBron James and his reps are continuing with this really head-scratching offseason approach. And it's very surprising. Because if there's one person who doesn't have enough hair to scratch on the top of his head, it's LeBron James. Protect those follicles, sir, on behalf of middle-aged men everywhere. Protect those follicles. Now, the latest plot twist in this disorienting vortex came from James's manager, Rich Paul, who told the Belcher Report, quote, "The Lakers' focus should probably be more so on Anthony Davis and LeBron at this point." And then Paul reiterated that James hasn't been an active participant in the Lakers coaching search, which of course nobody believes. Stop. But here's where it gets interesting. Paul is not only LeBron James's agent, he's Anthony Davis's agent. Paul played a key role in orchestrating the trade that brought Anthony Davis from New Orleans to LA in the first place. So maybe the first part of that statement is Paul is representing a client, Davis, who has way more years left on his career. He may not be as much in his prime as he was before, because he's 31, but he has a lot of years of productivity left. If Paul is being legit, if Paul is being candid, if he is urging the Lakers how to approach the offseason, it raises a really damn interesting question of priorities. Because if your priority is to win a title now, you build around LeBron James. You don't build around Anthony Davis. Look, the Lakers' 2020 championship roster was built to complement both of them, James and Davis, filled with a lot of really good 3-and-D guys. Davis, though, if you build around him, he needs someone who can create and get him the ball. In other words, you're looking to the successor of LeBron James. Because the running theory is maybe James has 2 years left in his career. You build around Davis, you need somebody who does the things that LeBron James can do. Maybe not as well as LeBron, but somebody who can. And of course, the Lakers have no desire to get rid of LeBron, which they should not. Which means, let's say you go after this mystery player, this third superstar. For the sake of argument, let's say it's Donovan Mitchell. Well, now you have two players with somewhat similar games. Isn't that the problem that the Lakers had when they went after Russell Westbrook? Anyone? Interesting question. You might think that the Rams have been pretty damn stable under Sean McVay, but the fact of the matter is he is about to work with his fourth defensive coordinator in Chris Shula. Now, McVay hasn't been chasing these guys out of town. Two of them wound up with NFL head coaching gigs. Third briefly retired. Now he coaches over in the UFL. McVay chatted with the scribes about what he looks for with new defensive coordinator Shula. Quote, "It always starts with the players. When Brandon Staley was our coordinator, there were a lot of things we were excited about with that specific system, some of the visions that he brought. And then Raheem Morris kept a lot of the foundational philosophies, but put his own spin on it. Really, when you look at the 3 years, there were some different identities, but it was all predicated on our personnel. Chris will do the same. Get a lot of our young guys that we feel really good about, and then we were able to add some veteran players on the back end. A lot of guys that played football last year that will use that experience as a positive. I think if you stay the same, this league is too difficult, and then you become easy to be attacked. I've been really pleased with the job Chris has done with this group so far." So, unquote. What the hell does that mean? I've really gone into a deep dive. I've gone into all kinds of tape, playbooks, to try to give you some semblance of an idea of what the Rams might be doing. Because the Rams defense does not look anything like what it did since before McVay arrived. Before he arrived, they ran a 4-3 out in St. Louis. Now, they had a terrific defensive line. It was Chris Long, the son of Howie Long, the Hall of Famer, Robert Quinn at the end. The defensive tackle were Aaron Donald and Michael Brockers. So McVay arrives and he's thinking, wait, we know what we have in Aaron Donald. So we're going to change things just for him. So he goes out, he hires Wade Phillips to run the entire defense. Wade Phillips was known in coaching circles as the godfather of the 3-4. Now, the 3-4 has existed for decades. You don't have to be a football expert to know that. But prior iterations of the 3-4, the traditional 3-4, and I know you can't see me over here, what are you going to do? The traditional 3-4 included a lot of two-gap rushing. What does that mean? You would line up both ends opposite the offensive tackles. You would have your nose tackle across from the center. But instead of going straight ahead, all three of them would slant, either this way to shoot a gap between two guys or this way to shoot a gap. You would do that because what you're trying to accomplish is stuffing the offensive line and having your linebackers react to what the offense is running. You would let the linebackers, in essence, make all the great plays. What Wade Phillips did was he went instead from two gap to one gap. In other words, you weren't slanting. The nose tackle would line up between the center and one of the guards. One end would line up outside an offensive tackle. The other end would line up between a tackle and a guard, and you would bring up a linebacker to play rush end. And you guys would all shoot the gap. Wade Phillips had those guys all attack. So that's one gap versus two. Then Brandon Staley was hired, and he was hired specifically to replicate a system created by a longtime defensive coordinator. He still coaches, by the way, Vic Fangio. Fangio liked to run a 3-3-5 instead of a 3-4. Now, we've talked a lot about the 3-3-5 because USC tried and failed when they ran it with Alex Grinch. Now, with the 3-3-5, the way that the Rams ran it with Brandon Staley, you would often take both outside linebackers and bring them up to the line of scrimmage. In other words, it didn't really look like a 3-4. It looked like a 5-1, which was bananas. Now, two safeties, you're putting all that pressure up top. You're sitting there going, well, wait, if we don't get enough pressure, we're going to get beat deep. Staley would then take two safeties of the five defensive backs, pull them back to cover deep zone to make sure that you weren't going bombs away on the Rams all day. And as for these five guys up here, it was a hybrid. Some would play the two gap, which we talked about earlier, slant, and try to sneak through. Others would just play one gap. The two gappers would read the play and react. The one gappers were just going out, saying we're going to murder the quarterback or whoever has the ball. Now, when you look at this 5-1, you could say, well, hell, that one linebacker in the middle might need a little bit of help. And because of that, what they did was that's when Jalen Ramsey was turned into this position called a star. In other words, he wasn't being a shutdown corner like he was in Jacksonville. He was turned into a hybrid linebacker and defensive back. He was helping out. And the coverages were mixed. But we broke that down on earlier tapes because Brandon Staley went on to be the head coach of the Chargers. As we all know, he failed. Because it is so damned complex, the 3-3-5. You run it well, you're great. You don't run it well, you're Alex Grinch over at SC. Morris put his own spin on it when he replaced Brandon Staley. He reverted back to a 3-4, but he kept some of Staley's principles. Now, Shula, meanwhile, is coming in. He's coached under Morris. He's coached under Staley. He's coached under Phillips. Now, your guess is as good as mine in terms of how often he's going to blitz. Your guess is as good as mine in terms of the coverages. Shula and McVay won't say. You could make an argument he could go either way. He could go with the 3-4 because he admired Wade Phillips. He could sit there and go, you know what, I want to run a 5-1 because of what he saw with Brandon Staley. But if we were to assume that Chris Shula doesn't even have an original thought in his head, sorry, coach, I'm sure you're smart. I'm just saying, if you didn't have an original thought in your head, I can tell you two things about Chris Shula through his legendary grandfather, Don Shula, the longtime coach of the Dolphins. Shula's Miami's defenses were coached by Bill Arnsparger, and the goal was to play physical, mistake-free football. You're going to read a lot about the Rams returning to fundamentals, returning to learning how to block and tackle. Simple coverage, simple plays. That might sense to you that he might be going to something like the 3-4 because Staley's defense was extremely complex. That's only a guess. I could be wrong. One of the reasons why it's a waste of time to read the NFL mock drafts every year is each franchise has its own way of doing things. This also has to do with the Rams. Some teams draft to their needs, others draft to the best player available, and they'll say, screw it. We'll find a spot for him on the team. Some people really value great numbers at the combine, the so-called workout warriors. And then there are the Rams who do things entirely differently. They skip the draft combine completely. Sometimes they'll even go so far as to say, to heck with our picks, send half a dozen of them to Jacksonville to land a cornerback. The scribes hate it, but it's not like Jacksonville can draft right either. Anyway, one of the side effects for the Rams' way of doing things is a gaggle of analytics nerds have created something called the relative athletic score. How athletic are the Rams? They're the least athletic team in the league, according to this metric. Even by getting younger, they're not athletic. The draft class for the Rams was allegedly the 23rd most athletic in the NFL. Should you worry about that if you're a Rams fan? I wouldn't. Do you know who has lousy relative athletic scores? Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua doesn't strike anybody as a workout warrior either. You're going to sit there and tell me you would rather have, I don't know, Darius Hayward-Bay, the one-time Raiders pick, because he was a workout warrior over Puka Nacua? You tell me. Dave Roberts said Max Muncy, who has been out for the Dodgers since May 17th with a strained oblique, is now hitting off a tee. Muncy is actually eligible to return from the injured list on Sunday. The Dodgers have also released pitcher Drew Pomeranz, who was once one of the top relievers in the game, but he hasn't been able to latch onto a team regularly since he injured his flexor tendon back in 2021. Hasn't been in the majors since. He allowed 6 earned runs in 9 innings in the Dodgers minor leagues. But that's a little misleading in the sense that 4 of those earned runs came in his first outing. Dude's basically a free agent now. Here is something that you might not know. Intuit Dome, the new home of the Clippers, is the second most expensive stadium in the world. It costs $2 billion to build. Privately financed, completely paid for by owner Stephen Ballmer. By the way, if you're wondering, okay, well, what's the most pricey stadium in the world? It's across the street. It's SoFi. The Kings have signed 3 players to NHL contracts, and if you woke up to hear this news, I invite you to roll back over in your bed because none of those moves are worth losing sleep over. 2 of them are on so-called two-way contract, which is kind of like the NBA. You can shuffle them back to the minor leagues whenever you want. Those guys are winger Taylor Ward, defenseman Joe Hicketts. Caleb Lawrence was also signed. He was a 7th-round draft pick in 2022. But you let me know what you think in the comments thread. Do you build around Anthony Davis or LeBron James? Do you think this breakdown of the Rams defense gives you an idea as to what they might look like in this upcoming year? And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We're talking LA sports every single day here. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.